Okay, we're on.
Good to go.
So, how are you today, sir?
Oh, I'm wonderful. How about yourself?
Oh, I'm pretty good. Quite tired, but...
Yeah, long day, huh?
So I'm going to ask you to please introduce yourself.
Oh, well, my name is Micheal Yant.
So these are just a couple warm-up questions, just to get the juices flowing, as you said earlier. What sort of things do you like to do? Do you have any hobbies?
Photography, as a matter of fact.
Really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I do like to take photos and alter photos. And,
Yeah. I just started learning about this.
Yeah.
It's all very new to me.
Well, you're probably going to learn a whole lot more than I ever did. So.
Yeah, I've never been very tech savvy, but I imagine you're pretty tech savvy.
A little bit. Yeah.
This is just a random question I ask everybody. What's your favorite movie?
My favorite movie. Gosh, that's hard these days. There's so many movies. Oh, my favorite movie used to be Gladiator, but I think everybody says that.
That's definitely a good one.
Uh-huh. But I do like The Patriot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
I like that one. So you live in Benzie, right? Benzie.
Yeah, I live in Beulah, Benzie County.
I think that's good for warm-up questions. We're going to start with what they call biographical details.
Okay.
And, we'll start up the actual interview.
Okay. You want to know what branch of service I was in?
It will come up. Yeah.
Okay. I'm not going to try to lead your interview. Go ahead.
So the date is the November 13th, 2020, and this is my interview with Mr. Micheal Yant. Here we go. Where were you born, sir?
I was born in Pontiac, Michigan.
Oh, okay. Where on the hand is that?
So if you're looking at Michigan, okay, so you got Detroit area here. You go a little bit this way, and you got Pontiac area.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've always loved that we're able to do that.
Yeah. Carry our own personal maps.
Who were your parents?
Well, my mother was Candace Yant.
Okay.
I was born to a single mother.
Okay. And did she have a career?
She did. She worked for Ford Motor Company, up until she retired.
That's awesome. And do you have any biases then when it comes to Ford?
I used to. When I was younger, I did. Now my bias has moved towards Toyota.
Okay. Yeah, I know a lot of people that are all for Ford. Do you have any siblings?
I do. I have 3 living siblings, and I have 1 deceased.
Okay.
Yeah.
What were their names?
So my eldest is my sister. Her name is Mary. My 2 younger brothers that are surviving are Ronnie and Chris. And my youngest brother was Theodore.
Okay. And what did they do for a living?
They've done different things throughout their life. My sister is a Girl Scout leader, and she's a Sunday school teacher. My 2 brothers, my brother Ronnie works in the windmill industry, and my brother Chris is a truck driver.
Awesome. My grandpa's a truck driver.
Yeah.
So what were your parents' feelings about joining the service?
Oh, my mom was proud of me. I was the first Marine in my family.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What about your friends? Were they as supportive as your family?
By the time I was joining the Marines, I had kind of started moving away from friends and doing my own thing because I was in college. I actually got married at age 18. So, when you're young and you get married that young, your friends, that are single stay single, and you're trying to be a responsible adult at a young age. So,
Yeah. So you joined the service while you were in college?
yeah, I was going to Oakland Community College. Actually, it was a recommendation by my recruiter that I attend college before I joined. So I completed 1 year of college before going into the Marine Corps.
Okay. And so a lot of people who enlist, they just go straight out of high school. Is that correct?
Well, I don't know the statistics as far as, high school GED that go straight to or college. I can tell you back when I went, just in my platoon in recruit training, there's probably just a handful of us that actually had college. So I guess it's a fair assessment to say that.
Okay. Did it help you at all? Like, did you learn
Oh, yeah.
college?
Absolutely. Well, when I went to college, I went for criminal justice. I had always had a lifelong interest of law enforcement. So that was my major, was criminal justice. Obviously, it helped me in my military career because it got me to the career path I wanted when I joined.
Okay. And so you said you wanted to be a Marine before you even went into college.
I did. I was looking to join the Marine Corps before I went to college. When I went to speak to a Marine Corps recruiter, he encouraged college before I joined.
Oh, did he say why that is?
There's some advantages to it. Number one, you get an automatic promotion, right, for having a certain amount of college credits. So it bumps you up a pay grade, by having some education when you go in, beyond high school.
Okay. Did you ever thinking about joining officer candidate school at all because you went to college, or?
I did not at that time, no.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
But you could do that, right? I don't really know.
Yeah, so, well, before you can join the military, you have to take what's called an Asvab. Okay, so it's a test, just kind of like you would take at school, right? Like an IQ test.
Yeah.
It's similar to that. So it gauges your level of knowledge, reading ability, math abilities, problem-solving abilities, your engineering abilities. There's a whole gambit of everything. Now, all that stuff is compiled into a scoring system, okay? It's all grouped together and gives you a score, all right? So whatever your score is, the higher that number is, the more apt you are to get into an officer program, okay? So if you fall lower on the scale, you may not be selected for officer program. If you're high on the scale, that's what they're going to try to move you towards as officer program.
So I have known a gentleman who went into officer candidate school. In fact, it was officer candidate school for the Marine Corps. And he talked about how interesting it was to be surrounded by like immature 18-year-olds and stuff.
Sure.
Did you experience that?
Well, I mean, I was 18 myself. When you're going into the service, you got people from all climes and places all over the United States, even some from foreign countries, joining the United States service. Especially back when I joined, it was highly encouraged for someone trying to get their citizenship to join the military. It was kind of a fast track for them. Because you have such a big group, right? A big mix of people from everywhere. Maturity is different everywhere, right? And it's all perceived maturity as well. Especially when you're 18. I can remember when I was 18, I thought I knew it all. Which is not a mature way of thinking, because you're just fooling yourself if you think you know everything already at 18. Right? Because there's so much more in life to learn.
Definitely. Yeah, I've been told, like, people looking around, what the heck are these guys doing? Just like hitting each other all the time.
Yeah, goofing, playing around, yeah.
So next up is what primary and secondary schools did you attend? You already said Oakland Community College, right? Mm-hmm. What high school did you go to?
I went to Walled Lake Central.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And what was that like?
It was a little difficult for me back then. Schooling was different. Uh, I wasn't as into high school as I was to college.
Okay.
Because of the maturity level thing, you got everybody's breaking off into their little groups, and you got controversy between groups. So it's hard to focus on, schoolwork so much as popularity contest. I don't know how it is these days for you. I'm sure it hasn't changed.
It really hasn't.
Yeah. So, once you get out of that realm and into the college lifestyle, people are a lot more mature. Your teachers or professors, treat you more of an adult than maybe your high school teachers would.
Okay. Huh. Yeah, it really has not changed.
Yeah.
People are
I
still,
think it's kind of a rite of passage.
people are still dummies. Did you hold any jobs before entering the service?
Yeah, I did some security work. I was a manager for McDonald's. I did a whole lot of things. I started working when I was 12 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, back before they had laws saying you couldn't do that.
That is interesting, like being the manager.
Uh-huh.
Were you
I was 16 when I was a manager.
16? Huh?
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm going to ask you about early days of service, mostly training questions.
Okay.
Can you tell us about when you went into the military? Like what was the military scene like when you joined?
Well, like I said, I had gotten married at 18 before I joined the military. That was back in 1992. In 1992, the Marine Corps specifically was very different. They did not allow or did not want to allow married men into the Marines. Couldn't tell you the understanding behind that, other than the Marines used to say, if we wanted you to have a wife, we'd issue you one. So, going into the Marine Corps was difficult for me in that respect because I had to climb uphill battles with me being married. There was even a point where they asked me to get a divorce to enter the Marine Corps.
Oh, what did your...
I refused. That's you don't get married to get a divorce.
Yeah.
So I refused because I didn't think that was reasonable. I wanted to serve my country, but to tell me I had to give up a certain part of my life, at that point in time, I didn't think was right.
Yeah.
So I stood my ground, and basically I was told, and I don't know how factual it was, but at the time, you don't know anything going to talk to a recruiter. I wasn't allowed to come in unless I signed what they call an open contract.
Okay.
What an open contract is they choose your job, right? Your peacetime job.
Yeah. And okay, but you didn't do that.
No, I did. I signed an open contract so I could get in. It was kind of like the manipulation to get in,
Okay.
right? I was only allowed to come in as a married man if they got to choose what my MOS would be.
Did those things that they asked you to do, even the things you refused to do, did they ever dampen your opinion of their establishment?
No. Back in '92, you had some things going on. Okay, it was just after Desert Storm. We just fought a war in the Middle East. So the climate for me was I wanted to serve. I wanted to serve my country. Because back during Desert Storm, it's kind of like, for me, that was the first time seeing war on TV.
Yeah.
Right, actual war. And some of the footage that I saw back then, is what motivated me to want to serve. I saw young men dying for their country, and I didn't feel it was right for me to sit by and do nothing while men volunteered to serve and give everything for their country.
I've definitely felt like that many times before. I forgot what I was going to ask right after that. But it didn't change your opinion of that. So you still continue to respect the Marine Corps?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Did you have any other inspirations other than just seeing this amazing example set by these men? Did you have like friends that?
Well, you know, I didn't have any personal friends that were Marines. I didn't have any family members that were Marines. I had an uncle that was a Vietnam veteran.
Okay.
He served in the Army. And part of that kind of inspired me, but my uncle back then wouldn't talk. He would not ever talk. I had a project similar to what we're doing right now.
Oh.
And I wanted to interview my uncle. And he did not want to have any part in talking about his experience. So I can't say that I leaned towards inspiration from him. My grandfather was a World War II veteran in the Navy. So I looked up to him my entire life, you know, growing up. Did I know what it meant to serve? I had no idea. Did my grandfather talk in depth about his experience in World War II? No, he didn't. He did acknowledge his service. He didn't ever say anything negative about his service. He was proud to serve. And that was the extent. Of course, as a child, looking up at your grandfather, you know, this is a man that served his country proudly.
Yeah.
You know, and I wanted to emulate that as well.
Definitely. I'd like to ask you, well, you pretty much already answered why you joined. Right? So what or who did you really leave behind? You said you had family members, but they supported you. Did any family members not support you?
No, everybody supported my decision. Everybody was very proud of my decision to serve. My close friends, you know, I didn't even say goodbye to them. I was just kind of on my own path. Yeah. You know, I felt like at that point in time for my life, it felt more like I was going to a job.
Okay. So, did you have any like pets or anything like that you had to leave behind?
I did not.
Okay.
No.
Now, you've already mentioned the Marine Corps several times, but it says you were also in the U.S. Navy.
That's correct.
I'm very curious about that.
Well, back to when I said I had to go in open contract in the Marines. Okay. So open contract, they got to pick my job. I didn't get to pick my job. Okay. So although I served in the Marines and I served proudly in the Marine Corps, you know, I was going to be a lifer. For the eight and a half years that I served in the Marine Corps, I was always trying to get my job that I wanted, right, which was law enforcement.
Okay.
But because of, you know, high performance, you know, that I was in the Marines, in the job that they gave me, you know, you always put in 110%. So I was really good at what I did and became, as it was explained to me, too valuable to move, right? So I was good at my position. They wanted to keep me there.
Okay.
So, but I didn't want to stay there. Even though I was putting in 110%, I didn't want to stay in that job. I wanted my dream job, right? Because that was always my thing, you know, before I joined the Marine Corps. I always wanted to be in law enforcement. So they wouldn't allow me to do that. So I decided, okay, well, you know, I'll go to another branch that will allow me to do that. And that's when I left the Marine Corps and I went to the Navy.
Okay. And about what year was that?
That would have been 2002.
Okay. So you only spent 4 years in the Navy?
Yes.
Okay. Is that one term, or explain that to me?
Okay, so you're talking about enlistments. Okay, so that varies. Generally, when you sign up to enlist in the military, they want you to enlist for 4 years. Okay. But there are other occasions where they make special accommodations where you can sign up for as little as 2 years. All right, so you have a choice when you first enlist, 2 years or 4 years. The catch is they actually own you for 8. Okay, so once you sign that contract, inside that contract, it tells you that they can extend your stay up to 8 years. Or they can recall you up to 8 years.
Okay. Was there ever the possibility of you being recalled?
Well, no, because I served all my time.
Okay.
I served past 8 years. So there was never anything like that where there was a possibility for me to be recalled.
Okay. You've been talking about your peacetime job that you weren't really happy with. What was that?
Well, I was an aircraft rescue firefighter.
Okay.
And I can't say I was unhappy with it. It just wasn't my dream job.
Okay. What did that entail?
Well, so have you know about airport firefighters?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, so it's a firefighter, but you put out aircraft fires. Okay, it's a little bit different than the military because you have fighter jets and bombs and ammunition attached to those airplanes. Right. So what our job and our mission was as aircraft rescue firefighter was to watch and maintain safety on the airfield, watch aircraft take off and land. In the event of a crash, we would go and rescue a pilot if need be. Most of the time, a pilot would probably eject before they crashed. However, we still have to deal with, the aircraft itself. And those aircraft could be carrying a 5,000-pound bomb, or there was one time in my career, we had a F-18 trying to take off. It failed to take off. Pilot ejected. It ran off the end of the runway. Jet's still going, kicking up dirt. Had a 5,000-pound bomb attached to it. Yeah, so and we had to go in there and safe the bomb, shut down the aircraft. It's a pretty risky job.
I imagine you had to get special training to handle things like that.
Yeah, well, you go through what they call an A school or MOS school.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And
what is that like?
Well, when I went through my training in the Marine Corps, it was in Memphis, Tennessee, at a Navy base. So we learned about all, the different types of fire, different types of firefighting apparatus, extinguishing agents, and we had to practice fighting fires.
Did actual, forest firefighters or house firefighters come and train you about anything, or was it?
No, it's all military. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. It's all done within house.
That sounds kind of scary. Did they ever kind of scare you about the things that they talked about?
With the firefighting, well, not for me. I mean, some people were afraid of fire.
Yeah.
The techniques and everything they taught you in firefighting school or aircraft rescue firefighting school. As far as fire went, you were taught you got to respect the fire. You don't have to fear it, but you need to respect it. You need to know how it works, how it lives and breathes. Okay, so once you understand that, the fear is diminished, right? Because yes, fire burns, and yes, bad things can happen. But if you understand how a fire lives and breathes and eats, you know how to combat it. Right, so you know how to protect yourself. Plus, we had special equipment. We called ourselves, it was like a potato suit. What I mean by that, you ever bake a baked potato?
Yeah.
All right, and you put it in what? Tin foil, right? You put it in tin foil. Our firefighting suits were like that.
Okay.
All right, they weren't made out of tin foil, but they were silver and reflective. Our face masks were actually made out of, lined with gold. Just like a astronaut would use out in space.
Were they hot? If you were in a fire, would it get really hot?
If you were in it long enough, of course, you still feel heat, but you would. We were in fires, with jet fuel. You're talking about almost 2,000 degrees. And you're pretty comfortable in there.
Were they somewhat fireproof?
Oh, they're absolutely fireproof. Yeah.
So that made you feel a little better then?
Sure, yeah. I mean, that boosts your confidence because, okay, that wasn't that bad.
Okay.
Right? It's a little warm in there. I'm sweating, but, I'm not burning up in this fire.
Okay. What is your most vivid memory of training? What was the best part?
Of training. Well, like I said, I mean, I went into that whole thing, not happy about the job that was selected for me.
Yeah.
Right. So, I listened and I studied and I did everything that I needed to do the best job I could. But I didn't ever do anything in training for me that was like profound, because it wasn't what I wanted to do, right? My mind was distracted on how do I get out of this and do something else.
So it did kind of dampen your experience.
Yeah, well, because, everybody wants what they want, right? So if you want to be, an interviewer, somebody that's on TV or something, and your job is to be a manager at McDonald's, well, is that where you're going to stop your aspirations,
Yeah.
Are you going to stop there and be like, well, this is it, I'm a manager at McDonald's? No, you're going to keep aspiring to achieve your goals. Doesn't mean you're not going to do the best job that you can, in the job that you're in, but you're never going to stop trying to find a way to progress.
Yeah, definitely. So, does any particular instructor stand out in mind?
I'm sorry?
Does any particular instructor stand out?
Well, Marine Corps boot camp, I'll never forget my senior drill instructor's name. I haven't to this day. His name was Senior Drill Instructor Staff Sergeant Peak.
Okay.
That is a man that left a mark on my soul. But he's the first, he's the first leader, in my military career. He's the person that you looked up to and you wanted to be. So that's why it's so ingrained in me, to always remember who he is.
Yeah. Now, of course, I've never experienced it up to that extent,
Mm-hmm.
but I have had coaches, wrestling coaches, football coaches that I just admire so much and I respect to such an extent. They're like the example that is set for me.
Right.
In my childhood. And I have reasons. Was there anything like that he did in his career, or any particular thing about his personality that made him so special?
Well, he was a really strong leader. He was, like I said, you got to get the mentality of, and it's hard to put you there talking about it, but when you go in, especially you go into the Marine Corps, you have no idea what you're going into. You think you do, but you don't, right? It's all maybe what you heard, or maybe what you saw on TV, or maybe you saw in a movie. That gives you the perspective of what you're headed into. When you get into training, it's a big wake-up call, because now all of a sudden, everything you thought you know, you don't. What they want to make you out to be, to best serve your country, is so much far greater than you can imagine, as a civilian.
Yeah.
So it's how you walk, it's how you talk. It's not just fighting battles. You can think of, boot camp is like finishing school, right? They teach you how to sit, they teach you how to speak, they teach you how to walk. Everything's done all over again. So when you're looking at your drill instructors are obviously the foundation of what you are to become in the military, because they're the example, right? They are the example of what it's supposed to be, especially to be a Marine. Okay? So they live it, eat it, breathe it, sleep it.
So you talked about seeing like things you thought it was going to be a certain way because of media,
Mm-hmm.
like movies and TV and stuff. So what you're saying is movies and stuff aren't really a good representation of what it's really like.
No, they're not. They're not. Well, I mean, it's they like to put the drama in there. But you know, here's the thing: is you obviously you say you wrestle,
Yeah.
okay? Now, before you started wrestling, you know, before you had your first match, did you think that you kind of knew what you were getting into?
Well, do you mean before I started practicing?
Well, when you have your first match in front of a crowd,
Oh,
right? It's different, right?
Yeah.
It's not practice. Now you're being watched. Now everybody's looking at you, watching your performance.
yeah.
Right? So
It can be told to you, but
the feelings,
yeah,
the sensations that you feel, that the adrenaline, your heart pounding, right? The goosebumps that gets on your skin, you know, Hollywood can't do that for you,
yeah,
right? So it's a whole different feeling from watching maybe wrestling on TV,
yeah.
right? Because now you're actually performing,
Okay.
right?
I've heard. Do you think that any movies do it remotely well? Like for me, I've never been in the military.
Right.
But I have read a whole bunch of things about accuracy when it comes to movies and stuff. Like I think of like Platoon, or not Platoon,
Mm-hmm.
Full Metal Jacket,
Uh-huh.
or something like Jarhead. I apologize. That's
No, that's okay. No, jarhead's not an offense.
okay. Oh,
Call each other jarheads, leathernecks, devil dogs.
okay.
Yeah.
I was afraid of saying that.
Yeah.
Do you think any of them do it at all good?
Well, you know, I'll tell you, this is what I can tell you just knowing about the history of the movie Full Metal Jacket. Okay. Full Metal Jacket was actually filmed and shot partially at Parris Island, North Carolina. Okay, the Marine Corps barracks where I was trained.
Really?
Okay, yes. So, of course, it was years before I was there, right? But it was in the barracks of where I was actually trained. The drill instructor in the movie was a real drill instructor. Okay, they tried to have an actor do it, but he couldn't pull it off. Right? So they had an actual Marine to play the part of the drill instructor. Right? So it's as real as it can be in that movie, the boot camp portion of it. Okay. Now times have changed. Okay. You won't have drill instructors punching you in the throat. Not these days. Okay. Will they get in your face and scream at you and yell at you and humiliate you? Well, yeah, it's part of the training process. Okay. It's called inoculation, stress inoculation. Okay. So what that is you know, you're comfortable going home, going to school. You're not experiencing much stress in your life. Okay. Combat is high stress. All right. So we have to stress inoculate you, right? To where we stress you out the maximum we can in a training, so that way when you get into combat for the first time in your life, you know, it's not as stressful for you. Right? Because what happens when you're stressed? When you're extremely stressed,
Start not doing things right.
right? You start making mistakes. You start not doing things right. All your senses go out of whack, right? And you fall into a category where you're doing a couple things, right? You might freeze and do nothing, right? You might get scared and run away, right? Or you might fight, right? Now, what they're trying to do with the stress inoculation is to train you to fight, right? Not do the other two. So they have to stress you out as much as they can every day, all hours of the day, and make you feel like you don't know which way's up or down, right? To inoculate you. So over time, when you're experiencing that, you learn how to deal with that high stress situation.
And what sort of things did they do, like in the beginning, to get you used to that?
Well, you know, so in the very beginning, when you first show up to boot camp Parris Island, you know, they have the infamous yellow footprints. Okay. So part of what you saw in maybe Full Metal Jacket, you know, when the drill instructor comes on the bus and starts yelling, right? Well, first off, you're showing up at 3 o'clock in the morning, right? You're tired. You want to go to sleep. You've had a long journey from wherever you came from to go to Parris Island, right? You've had a flight. You've had to sit at an airport. You had to ride a bus for a few hours just to get there. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. And all of a sudden you got someone screaming and yelling, you hurry, go fast, move, 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 right? So it begins as soon as you arrive. The next thing they do is they say, okay, well now we need to know how many people we have. We need to know that everybody's here. So they scream and yell, someone to grab a marker, right? And you don't know where the markers are at, right? But they're telling you to hurry, do it fast. Right? So you got people running around not knowing what they're doing, right? And then they're writing numbers on your hand, right? It's like 1, 2, 3, 4. They're counting, right? So everybody gets a number on their hand, right? And then you're yelled at to stand on the yellow footprints, okay? So they have yellow footprints that are so close together, right? Your chest to back. And they want you to just stand there. And you're like, okay, well, now what? You're always asking, now, what's next? What's next? But they don't tell you that. They just tell you when to move, how fast to move. So when you go in, they take you into a building, and you're supposed to fill out paperwork, which is to basically let you know that there's a possibility you could get hurt in boot camp. A high possibility you could get hurt because you're combat training. Yeah. They let you know that there's a possibility you could die in training. And if you don't fill out this paperwork we're going to sit in front of you properly, your family and your parents will never know what happened to you. Right? So they pass all this paperwork out and they say, okay, don't open it. Don't open the booklet until we tell you to. So you're sitting there with a pencil, wondering, how much do I have to fill out? This is a booklet, right? And you're not thinking, well, they're not going to give me a lot of, they're going to let me fill it out properly, of course, because they just said, right? They just said I have to fill it out properly, or else, no one's not going to know what happened to me. If I get hurt or if I die, no one's going to know. And then they tell you, open the booklet, and they tell you got 2 minutes to fill it out. And then you're looking at 15 pages of information you have to fill out. And you're like, oh my God. Right? So you're writing as fast as you can, and your lead's breaking, and your pencil, and you're asking for another pencil, and they're telling you, don't raise your hand. Just fill out your paperwork. And now the stress is growing higher and higher already. Right? Because you're like, I'm not going to be able to finish this. And they got a clock ticking. And the timer's counting down, and it's just counting down. And you're like, oh my God. And then they say, you're done. Put your pencil down. It's like a fast quiz, right? Put your pencil down. And everybody's stressing out because no one finished their paperwork. Everybody's like, oh my gosh. What am I going to do? I didn't get to finish my paperwork. Right? And they just tell you to pass it along. Begins the stress inoculation. Because now they've got you stressed out the max because all you're thinking about is, oh my gosh, I didn't do it right. I messed up already. And I've only been here for 30 minutes.
That's crazy. Do you know if they still do something like that?
Oh, I'm sure they do. I'm sure they do.
Have you ever gone back to witness any training at all?
No, I've not been back to Parris Island. It'd be interesting to see it from a different standpoint other than being in it. Okay. But it's stuff you never forget. Basic training in the Marines is not something you ever forget.
I can imagine, yeah.
Yeah.
What was your first assignment after basic training?
Oh, well, so after I went through basic training, I had to go through Marine Corps combat training. Okay. Because in the Marine Corps, every Marine is a rifleman. Okay, every Marine's an infantryman, no matter what your job is during the peacetime. Okay, so they all train for combat. So I went to Marine Corps combat training in North Carolina. So I didn't go far. Right, went from South Carolina to North Carolina, out at Camp Lejeune. So you go out there and you do Marine Corps combat training. So now you're getting a little bit more into, weaponry, more of the weapons training and maneuvers and, force marches, and you're perfecting your craft as an infantryman.
Okay. So you said you received specialized training somewhat for your job as a fireman, or what is the title of your job again?
Well, in the Marine Corps, it's aircraft rescue firefighter, and I don't know if it's still that. Okay. It may have changed, but that's what it was back when I was in.
Okay, and so you did receive specialized training.
Well, yeah, I learned how to rappel out of helicopters. There was a lot of special. Like I said, every Marine is an infantryman. Okay, so I worked with EOD, disposing of bombs out in the desert. Aircraft would drop bombs out in the desert for training, and they didn't necessarily always explode. So we have to go out there and help, set plastic explosives on these bombs, to detonate them, so that way they're no longer a danger. There's a whole lot of different. You get nuclear, biological, chemical training, right, for biological nuclear war. A lot of the specialized training I went through was desert warfare survival, cold weather warfare survival, rear area security. It goes on and on and on. I can't even tell you all of it. I can't even remember all of it, because throughout my career I just trained and trained and trained.
What was the hardest part of the military lifestyle for you to adapt to?
In the beginning, it was just lack of knowledge, right? So everything, just like high school, everything's a popularity contest, okay? You're fresh blood, you're new in the military, okay? So everybody's going to pick on you. Everybody's going to see what you're made of. Everybody's going to test you out, right? So, and that could frustrate you and make you want to fight. Yeah. And so that was a difficult adjustment, because it's like, okay, you think, all right, I went through all this chaos and all this hard times in basic training, and then I went through more when I went through combat training, right? Now I'm out in the fleet thinking, okay, they're going to treat me good now because I'm trained up. But they don't. They treat you even worse, right? Because they're testing you, right? Everybody's trying to feel you out, what you about, And so you're just like, when does this end? How does this end, right? And you might make friends. You're going to make friends, but you might make enemies too, right? It's just like anywhere else in society, just like high school, right? People start segregating in little groups, right? Their little cliques is what we called them, right? They get in their little cliques. So you might fit into one clique, but not another, right? So even within the military, yes, there's a brotherly bond, but there's also cliques, right? This is my group of friends. That's your group of friends. It's like high school still, right? And it's frustrating, especially if you're a little bit more mature than everybody else. But what I learned in a very short period of time is the more you learn about military justice, military law, right, the easier your transition into that becomes. Because there's people that outrank you, right? And within the military, if someone outranks you, you have to do what they say. Even if it's stupid, right? You have to do what they say, right? And that's where they try to test you in that respect. They might tell you, go scrub out the dumpster. Well, what am I doing that for?
They told you.
Just because they told you to, right? Because there's a maturity level with leadership, right? So someone might outrank you and they don't know how to lead, but they think it's awesome they can tell you what to do, and you have to do it, right? But when you learn how the military actually works, you learn the laws and the rules of regulation. You also learn that they can't just tell you what to do. You don't have to do everything they say. There's a difference between a lawful order and an unlawful order. Okay, and once you learn that, and then you don't learn how to stand your ground and say, nice try, funny joke, you know, then things change for you. And it makes the military life easy to tolerate.
Okay. So, did you ever get any sort of promotion or any leadership, place in leadership?
Yes, I did. I made sergeant in 2 years.
Okay.
That's an E5. So in the enlisted ranks, you got basically 9 ranks, okay, more or less. So E1 through E9. Okay, so I was an E5. I was about halfway there.
Okay. And did you ever catch yourself like making those sort of decisions, like making people do things?
No, you know, one of the things that people you encounter in your life, especially in the military, you do learn things from, good and bad. You know, I had a sergeant, you know, my first year. He was terrible person. But I had to follow orders from this individual, even though his orders were just merely control and punishment. You know, if he didn't like you, you know, it had no purpose. It had no objective to complete. It was just to have power control. You know, and I thought, you know, back then, or when I was younger, that there's nothing for me to learn from this man. You know, but ultimately, there was. I learned a lot from him. I learned exactly how not to be. So when I became a leader, I always dedicated myself to know I would never be like that man. I would never treat my Marines the way he treated me. Right? So you take what you can get when you're in the military, and you put little tools in your toolbox, right? So you learn some great things, some great methods, some great leadership tactics, you know, and you put that in your toolbox, right? Because it works for you. Yeah. And you learn about the bad side and the ugly side of leadership, and you take that and you put that in your toolbox, right? Not because you're going to use it, but because you want to remember not to use it.
Where did you serve?
Oh, let's see. So my first duty station was Bogue Sound in North Carolina. It was basically a secret airstrip in North Carolina. It wasn't like a regular airport. We had mat for aircraft to land on. And it's made out of aluminum. It's a field expedient landing strip. That's where I served under, you know, the sergeant I was speaking of that had bad leadership, and I learned a lot from. Not to be that way. So after that, I went to Iwakuni, Japan.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I served in Iwakuni, Japan, and from there, while I was in Iwakuni, Japan, I served in Korea. We had a mission in Korea. It was a show of force against North Korea. And I was in South Korea for almost 6 months during this mission. From there, I went back to North Carolina, Camp Lejeune, New River, and I served there for probably the remainder of my 4 years. So and then a little bit into my second enlistment. So I probably was there for about 4 years. Okay. During that time, I got deployed to Kosovo. I don't know if you know anything about Kosovo.
Yeah, I don't.
Okay, so Kosovo, well, it's its own country now. It's a very young country now. Kosovo is over near Russia. The Kosovonians were experiencing some genocide, and they wanted to separate themselves from Russia. We got deployed over there to help refugees escape from being slaughtered. So,
did you have to learn any of their language?
You know, they speak English pretty well.
Oh, okay.
So no, didn't have to learn Russian or Kosovonian.
Yeah.
I didn't have to learn their language. But it was a very short period of time. You know, it was different because it was 98 and we went over there to protect these folks. They were constantly coming under attack, you know, and these are people carrying what they can of their life. You know, if you can imagine, you know, being thrown out from your home and chased down to be murdered, you know, families, you know, little children, babies, mothers, fathers, trying to escape. So we went over there to protect them, you know, to help them escape. Meanwhile, you know, they're constantly coming under attack, you know, being shot, and amongst other things. In the beginning, you know, we were very effective at protecting them. Something political happened, you know, between the United States and Russia basically threatened the United States if we didn't, you know, step out of the situation, you know, then obviously a war would begin between Russia and the United States. So our rules of engagement changed, right, which made us less effective, but effective enough that Kosovo is now its own country. So everything turned out okay, but it was a rough time for everybody.
I'd like to ask you about sorry about that.
No, go ahead.
Where were you? Okay, you said you were in combat. You said you were in were you in a combat service support role? That's what it says there.
Combat service support?
Yeah.
Well, you know, service support would be, to me, is, you know, giving supplies, supply chain. That's a support role to me. You know, cooking. You know, the aircraft rescue firefighting would be a support role. Anything outside of the infantry to me is a support role, right? So if you're an infantryman, you're in the middle of it all the time, 24/7. You know, everybody else is support. So when the infantry would move in and say take a city, you know, and secure a city, well, they got to move on to the next objective. So a support role would then move in to hold that ground. Okay, so yeah, I would say that I was in a supportive role.
Okay. Did that make your designation irrelevant, or no?
Oh no, because I saw combat.
Okay.
You know, the big heat of it was, you know, this war that we've been in for almost 20 years now. You know, that's finally coming to a slow halt. You know, back in 2004, it was heavy in Iraq.
Yeah.
It didn't matter what role you were in. You know, there was bombs and IEDs, bombs, ambushes everywhere. You know, it wasn't just, you know, the support group or support role was just as much danger as the infantry.
They're just everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, it was full on war.
And did you said that was around 2004?
Mm-hmm.
Did things like 9/11, something big like that, did that have an effect on the mentality while you were there? Like, did that?
Well, yeah. So, you know, I was in 29 Palms, California during 9/11.
Okay.
I was the chief, you know, of my department. I ran a company of 300 Marines, Charlie Company. And, you know, we had just been training. I had just pulled 72 hours of duty, you know, training my Marines. And I had gone home and went to sleep, long deserved, and woke up to, you know, people screaming. I could hear people screaming. I was on the base, you know, because people had watched this first aircraft crash into the Twin Towers on TV. And, these military spouses and stuff. I mean, women were screaming, and I woke up startled, like we were under attack. Yeah. And I rushed to the TV, and I saw the second aircraft hit, and I knew we were under attack. So for me, it was because I've been training for years, and I had some combat experience before, 9/11. And as a Marine, we can deploy within 24 hours. So my initial response, to just seeing that wasn't to sit there and watch it on TV. I got in my car, I went to my office, and I recalled my company. I told them to bring in their 782 gear, which is their combat gear, for inspection, because I wanted to make sure my men were ready to deploy right then and there. So for me, it was, I knew we needed to act. I knew something was going to happen. I knew war was going to be inevitable, so, but myself and my Marines, we were already prepared for it. We'd been training for it. Here's the nice thing is the Commandant of the Marine Corps, which is the highest ranking general in the Marines, he had a vision, that the fight would be, the future of the future battles for us were going to be, house to house. It wasn't going to be in a jungle somewhere, right? It wasn't going to be out in the middle of the desert. It was going to be in a city. So we had already been training, preparing, for this fight. So the the main thing is I was ready and prepared. Having an attack on our soil, of course, was a motivator to, go fight, to defend this country, and destroy our enemy.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know anybody that enlisted, like, right after that happened. Mm-hmm. That just motivated them. Empowered them to just go and serve. But I imagine that it was like something that just changed a whole bunch of things, I'm sure.
Well, I can tell you, for me, because when I joined, it was after Desert Storm. Desert Storm was a very short war. Okay? It was mostly fought by aircraft. It wasn't really fought by ground troops. So up until 9/11, the majority of my service was peacetime. I went to work, I went home. Yeah. Right? Unless I was training, going on a 2 weeks training or doing a 3-day training, I went home every night, just like any other job. So the military feels peace as much as, if not more so than the civilian sector. Okay? And what I mean by that is because we're trained to fight, right? We're trained to fight and kill the enemy to protect our nation. We see peace a whole lot differently, okay? Because in our peacetime, we're always training for war. In your view as a civilian, you're not training for anything. Right? You might be training for your next wrestling match. You might be studying for your next test, right? But you're not preparing for war. It's not always on your mind. So in the military, during peacetime, men and women are constantly training for war, constantly preparing for that next battle that may never come, right? So naturally, when that does come, they're ready. They're anxious to go, right? Because it's over time, you're doing that, and it's just like, well, what are we doing this for? Right? Why are we preparing so much? Right? Because we got this long span of peace. But that's the reason why we train. That's the reason why the military constantly trains for war, because if you're not ready, you won't be ready. When the war began after 9/11, there's branches of service that weren't ready for the type of war we were going to fight. They weren't ready for the urban warfare. The Army was still training to fight in the jungle, like they're still waiting to go back to Vietnam. They weren't ready for desert war or urban war. So there was a lot of catching up to do for that, and which also leads to, more injuries, more loss of life, because you're not ready, you're not prepared, you're not trained.
So, I'm curious. You talked about like becoming kind of restless in a way, because I'm sure it's frustrating, right? Just to constantly train and nothing happens. Which I'm sure you were happy about. Everybody's happy.
Well, yeah, no one wants war.
Yeah.
Right, but you want to be prepared. But in the same respect, you being a wrestler is a prime example. What if you went and you're training and training and training for a match that never comes? Yeah. Right? How long are you going to train for that match before you start going, well, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I've seen it. I've seen it happen. I mean, people just quit during the first week. Not always because they want to wrestle, but because it's like too hard sometimes. But, can you think of any times you were just so frustrated? You sound like, why am I doing this?
No, not for me. I always had my focus, on, this is what I used to tell my Marines is, especially when we're in war, you cannot take the world upon your shoulders. In other words, you can't fight the war for America. Okay, but who can I fight for? My family, right? Who are Americans, right? It's not the way of life for all that I can fight for, because until today, I didn't even know you existed. Yeah. Right? Before we had our first phone call, I didn't know who you were. Right? So I can't fight for you. I don't know you exist. Right? So I can shrink my world down really small and say, okay, this is what I'm fighting for. Right? The life and liberty and freedom that I enjoy with my family is what I'm fighting for. Right? Because if you make it too big, it gets too complicated. Right? Because what they want in Florida may not be what they want in California. Right? So I don't know that. Right? So you gotta narrow it down for yourself.
Yeah, I really, I love that. That's awesome. Sometimes I try to think about like unconditional love for like everybody, but I can see that helps me. I think about my family and my friends. Doing something that I really care about or for a good cause. I can definitely relate to that. How did your combat or experience in wartime change you? Did it change you?
Well, of course it changes you. So we're raised as Americans to, just like you just said, be kind, be peaceful amongst each other. Don't fight your brother, don't fight your sister. Don't hurt anybody. You're raised to do that. Yeah. Okay, so now you join the military and war begins. Now you're thrust in a position where, you got to take that and throw that aside, because now you have to actually take life. And that's a hard thing to overcome. It's a very hard thing. And the very first time you ever do it, of course, it's going to change you in ways you can't imagine. Everybody who hasn't experienced it will tell you, I can do it. I'll do it. Okay? But you don't know until it's time. Statistically throughout war, I don't know how much you are on history or military history, there's scholars out there that have done a lot of research. Let's go back to the Civil War. They've gone to old battlefields where wars were fought in the Civil War and dug up muskets. Okay, And I don't know if you're familiar with a musket, but you have a ball and you have a wad, and you have your gunpowder, and you gotta jam that stuff in there to fire it, right?
Yeah.
So they dug up thousands of muskets, and thousands, hundreds of thousands of them had more than one ball in it. What does that mean? One of them had 32 balls in it. They didn't shoot it at all, right? So it makes you go, why? Why? Okay, you're fighting for your life, and you got to think about the context of war then versus now. War then, you had a musket, so you're standing 100 yards or less from each other, face to face. It's in some cases, right? Pointing guns at each other, and you know that you've got to shoot at each other. You know this is a fight, life or death, right? But yet you're not going to pull that trigger, right? Because up here and in here, you've been raised to do no harm, right? So soldiers would pretend that they would fight, that they're fighting. Even at the risk of them dying, they would just pretend, right? And that's why you have a lot of massive loss in wartime, because it's not a cowardly thing. You're raised, it's in your programming. You're programmed to be that way. And so it's a hard thing to overcome. The first time I ever had to take a life, I felt like I lost my mind. I knew I had to. I knew for my safety and the safety of other Marines, I had to. But and not to get into the deep details about it, but I know it changed me in that moment, right? Taking a life away from somebody else who I didn't even know, never met, didn't even know. I just knew that he was going to take mine if I didn't take his. So for me, and my initial reaction was to blame everybody else. It was everybody else's fault that I had to do that, right? Which isn't rational, but that lives with you. It stays with you. You don't forget. You don't forget how it smelt, how it felt. You don't forget you can feel the other person's pulse, their being, and you can feel when it stops. And that's something that of course is going to change you. You can't look at things the same after that.
I can't even relate to, I can kind of, but.
I can sit here and tell you all about it, and I can even get, even if I could get into the gory details about it, I could never tell you in such a way for you to know. You can't know. Only those that have know. And I'm a little bit more open than most veterans. Like I said, my uncle, Vietnam veteran, he served 2 tours in Vietnam. He will not talk to a civilian, not one. He never told me his story until after I served in combat.
Yeah, you talked about going against what you taught your entire life. This is going to come out of nowhere, but my dad's a football coach,
Mm-hmm.
and he used to teach little kids, or middle schoolers. And these kids in 7th grade, some of them when they're just starting, they're just so awestruck that you're telling them to bash heads with these people.
Right. Knock him down.
Yeah. They think but that's what the animals do.
Mm-hmm.
The animals are the ones that hit each other and try to push each other into the dirt. And it's just, I see why that's a hard thing to get used to. What kinds of friendships or camaraderie did you form?
Lots. Oh my gosh. Like I said, I've been a lot of different places, throughout my military career. I've been deployed a lot of places. I didn't even get through half my list when I was telling you of places I've been. And, I can tell you, you meet new people everywhere, right? Other branches of service, but every time you go to a new unit or a new company, that's 300 more people you got to meet, right? So it's interesting, that you have to adapt to that. Some people find that a difficult thing and a fearful thing, right? It's like starting over all the time, right? You're leaving your home. It's like when you leave your home to go to the military, you don't know anybody there. It's just you, right? You're alone, right? You don't have friends there. You don't have family there, right? It's just you. So you got to make your friends. You got to make new friends, right? You'll make new friends and you'll make new enemies, in a short period of time. And then, when you're going through your military career and they say, okay, well, now we need you to go here, well, it's just you. You're not taking your buddies with you that you just made. It's just you, right? So that's a different part of the aspect of life too, but that's also a good part because you make so many friends, right? Of course, it's all starting over. Now you got to feel it. Have you ever gone to more than one school?
No.
But, okay, so, but had everybody you go to junior high school with, are you in high school with?
Yeah, definitely not.
Right, so you had that change, right? You had a little bit of that experience where it's like, okay, now I'm going to a whole different thing. I don't know anybody. I've got no friends, right? But you had to make new ones, right? And I'm sure you have plenty. I mean, you seem like a really nice young man. I'm sure you have plenty of friends. But, that's the thing is, once you leave high school and you go to college, well, now it starts all over again. And you're going to make new friends, right? And all these people have different experiences. They're at different places in their lives, right? They have different sets of knowledge, different belief systems, and it's so interesting and so fulfilling, right, to hear other perspectives than your own, because it helps you grow as a person to be able to see it from different eyes, right?
Yeah, I think that's amazing. That's just to meet that many people. I don't think I've met a fraction of the amount of people you had met, I'm sure. But did that ever make you feel lonely?
Yeah, yeah, of course. Because over time, you're doing that, and you're thinking about, okay, who do I still keep in touch with? Man, I got really close to this person. We were like best friends, and I haven't heard from them ever since. So that's a tough part. Is that always the case? Look, I've got friends from way back in the early days of the military that I still talk to. Right? Now there was a long period of time I didn't know where they were at. They didn't know where I was at. Right? But Facebook came around in our lives. Right? And all of a sudden I'm reconnecting with these people, and I've reconnected. Right? And it's amazing, right? Because that friendship, that bond is still there, right? To this day. And it will always be there.
Did any stand out to you? Like, what were they like?
Well, my closest friend, that was in the military with me, he was also one of my troops. I trained him and raised him, kind of sort of in the military. I was of higher rank, he was new. And I took him under my wing and showed him the shortcuts, right? It's kind of like, this is the experience I've earned. I'm going to give you the knowledge now, right? You don't have to learn it on your own. I'm going to give you a heads up what's coming your way. And he died back 4 years ago. He was a deputy, and he died in the line of duty about 4 years ago. Now, we'd always kept in touch. He called me the day that he met his future wife, now his widow. Called me the day that she was pregnant with his first child. I mean, I was always a part of his life from the day we met up until the day he died. But he stands out the most to me because, I think I was closest to him throughout my entire military career. And, there was a time that I actually had to save his life, and save him from drowning. Yeah, and but he always kept me. He considered me a part of his family. You know, I remember he would always call his parents, right, when we were deployed. He would always call his parents, and if I was anywhere near him when he was got his phone call to his parents, he wanted me to be with him so I could talk to his parents too. I'd never met them, right? I didn't know who they were, you know. It's like, why do you want me to talk to your mom? You know, but he like injected me into his family, right? And they treated me like a son, and I hadn't met them. And when I got out, you know, we stayed in touch, but it took 12 years for me to see him again, right? And when I saw him again, you know, I met his mom. I didn't get to meet his dad because his dad had passed the year before I went. Got to meet his younger brothers, you know, and I stayed with them, you know, and felt like family, you know. And I got to work with him up until, you know, he passed, so.
Well, did you talked about him calling his parents before he went out to do his duty.
Mm-hmm.
Did anybody have a sort of kind of, I want to say ritual, sort of like a thing for like good luck of some sort?
Everybody had their own thing, you know. For me, you know, I would always study the mission statement. You know, what is our objective? What are we looking to do? What are we looking to encounter? You know, but I was more of a leadership role, so I was more concerned with needing to know the objective. You know, what we were going up against, how we were going to get there. You know, what did we have? You know, to complete our task. Because I had so many people to look out for. So I didn't distract myself with rituals. That was my ritual. You know, I didn't write letters home. I didn't call home. I was just focused, because I felt responsible for everybody underneath me. You know, their life was my responsibility. So that was my focus. You know, other people, yeah, they wrote letters home, or they'd take a video, right? The cliques that you had, you know, they'd get together and maybe do have a little bit of fun their own way, you know, that kind of stuff. Because, you know, here's the thing is, when you're in an environment of war, you can't just not have fun, right? It's not fun being there. It's not fun worrying about, you know, is today my day? You know, is this my last day? Is this my last minute? You know, are we going to get bombed today? You know, if you constantly think about and worry about those things, well, you're just going to lose your mind. You know, so yeah, there's a lot of joking, joshing, and, you know, silly things going on, you know, to try to break that stress, right? To try to eliminate that battle fatigue, you know, before you go out on your next task.
Yeah. Some people.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about high school students right before a football game.
Uh-huh.
They just become kind of dummies for us.
Right. Yeah, well, and that's that steam release, right? I'm just going to act a fool for a minute.
Yeah.
Right.
But sometimes it helps. I mean,
it does.
Yeah. I mean, did you ever say to them, like, stop doing that, it'll distract you? Like,
you know, so there's a lot of different things that happen, you know, in life in general. It's not just for the military, you know. I mean, you got people that got girlfriends breaking up with them, you know. You got wives cheating on them, you know, stuff like that. Those kind of things still happen even though they're deployed. You know, they still have heartbreaks and heartaches, or maybe lose a family member, you know, things like that. Now, of course, I would try to deter them from being distracted with that, but, you know, there's only so much you can do with that. You know, I would always try and encourage them, you know, don't let distract you, right? Because it's your life, right? They're not here, you are, right? You know, your girlfriend might be a jerk, you know, or your boyfriend might be a jerk, but they're not here, you are, right? And in the military, with as close and as tight-knit as we are, you know, in a time of war, the men and women around you, that's your family. That's the people that you are fighting for in that moment, right? When you got some downtime and you're thinking about your family, your dog at home, you know, that's great. And that may be your motivation for fighting. That's what you're fighting for, just like I explained earlier. But in that moment, in the heat of the battle, the family that you're really fighting for is standing right next to you. You know, and if you're thinking about your family back home, you're not thinking about your family right here, right? Which creates mistakes, distractions, right? Have you ever been in a match and, you know, and you're in a tough match and your mind wanders on something else?
I mean,
other than what you're doing? Has that ever happened to you?
I mean, yeah, but that was a mistake.
Right, and it cost you, right?
Yeah.
It cost you because you're not focused on your task,
yeah.
right? So yes, of course I would encourage people to stay focused on the moment, right? There's a time for mourning, there's a time for grieving, you know, bad things in your life, but there's also a time to ignore it for the task at hand, right? Because that's what's going to increase your survival rate, you know, is focusing on your mission, focusing on what you need to do. Because if you don't, bad things happen.
So, I'm going to take you way back to the beginning. You said that your family was generally supportive of you.
Sure.
In this job. Now, when it came to going into actual action, or you're about to go out to do like a job,
mm-hmm.
Do you know how your family felt about that?
I don't, because like I said, I mean, for me, I was disciplined. For my discipline, personally, I felt no contact was better than any contact. I'd rather not have bad news and be distracted by it, right? So I'd just rather not have any news, you know? So my mentality was kind of like, no news is good news, right?
Yeah. Huh. Were there any humorous or unusual events that took place?
Yeah, some of it, you know, the things that come to mind that's really unusual and funny, you know, I really don't think is appropriate to even talk about.
I can relate to that.
Yeah, well, you know, I don't even know how to approach that. You know, there's a lot of people do always, you know, joke, pulled pranks on each other, stuff like that, you know. Especially if it was somebody that outranked you, you know, and you knew you could joke with them, you know, like uniform and the bunt of everything that you wear is really important, right? You wear it right, your medals, your rank, you know, whatever. Everything's got to be just perfect, lined up. Everything's got to be just so. Right? So it was always easy to pick on somebody jokingly, you know, by messing with that kind of stuff, you know, turning their rank upside down on their collar, or, you know, playing jokes like that. Those are the harmless things. Everything was pretty harmless, but some of it was, I don't think most civilians could appreciate and understand how it could be funny, right? Because it's a little out there. I'll just go out and put it out there, and you can edit it out if you want. But, you know, people would see who could poop bigger, right? So you did stupid stuff like that, right? Who could poop bigger? So, yeah, there's a lot of funny things that are just, like, outrageous that you'd never see anywhere else, you know.
It's a different situation.
Well, you don't have Facebook to mess with. You don't have video games to mess with. You don't have things available to you, so you just make stuff up. All right, you make up games, right? Some of them are kind of nasty, you know, weird, but they're harmless, right? But it's all just trying to break that stress.
What was the, and this is very broad, what was the best part of your service experience?
Well, it's hard to narrow that down because I served for almost 14 years. The best part is probably the people I met. The friends I made is definitely the best part. Being able to, like I said early on, I got to travel a lot of different countries. I got to be in a lot of different places, see a lot of different viewpoints from different people, different societies, different religions, and I got to experience a little bit of that all over. So for me, I've always felt like, that's what made me a better rounded person, more than what I thought I ever could be. Right, because I got to see and experience things from other people, other cultures that most people don't get to experience in their lifetime. Which gives me a whole different perspective on community, gives me a whole different perspective on humanity overall.
Yeah. I was gonna ask you if like those feelings, if those things you learned for yourself, like your own set of morals, if it like translated into the real world. But
it does, well, because and it could be good or bad, right? It's just like that toolbox I was telling you. It depends on what I put in my toolbox. Some of the things that I experienced from other cultures that I can relate to, or I felt more relatable to, doesn't necessarily translate into American society, right? It doesn't always translate because we don't do it here in America. I love the Japanese people. I love them. They are the most honorable people I've ever met. I know we have a history of World War II, with the Japanese and Pearl Harbor and things like that, but that's history. People grow and change. Societies grow and change. And, I can tell you, my time in Japan was probably the most profound to me as far as a culture that I could relate to. People treat each other very respectfully there. They treat each other with honor is huge to them. Dishonor is a very bad thing. They know how to treat their elders. They know how to treat each other with respect and dignity. And I think that's something that we lack here in the United States. So I look at some folks, and I have to shake my head because it's like, how are we so far from that? This is if you think about history and wartime history, you think, the Japanese, they had the suicide bombers and, they were mean, had this appearance of mean and evil people, would do anything to win a war, outside of it wouldn't seem honorable to us at all, and then you go stay there and it's just like, wow, why are they so nice? And we're not. How come we don't know how to treat her? I'll give you a story. When I was in Japan, I left the base, I went for a walk, and I was walking by myself and I felt like, okay, I want to explore Japan a little bit. Left the base, went walking around, and I was in a residential area in Japan, which is not hard to be in because it's very super populated. But this Japanese woman, come running out of her house, onto the street, and she's yelling at me in Japanese. I'm thinking, what did I do? What did I do wrong? I'm sorry. And she's grabbing at me and pulling on me. So then I thought, something's wrong. She needs my help. And she dragged me to her front door. And in Japan, you can't wear shoes in the house. Okay? You got to take them off at the door. And then they got house slippers. They got slippers for each room in their house. So I had to take off my shoes and put on house slippers. Right? And she took me into the dining area. where her family was sitting, waiting to eat. I'm thinking, well, what's going on? I didn't speak Japanese. I didn't understand what she was saying. But what she was doing, she saw me. It was dinner time. Everybody's at home eating, and I'm out there walking alone. And that woman saw me and said, I need to feed that man. So she chased me down, dragged me into her home, a perfect stranger, to sit down and have a meal with her family. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. What a culture.
That's incredible. I don't think I've ever heard an example or a story like that, at least around here, Surely there are generous people.
Surely, yes.
Incredibly generous, but... Yeah.
It's not a common practice for Americans.
Yeah.
If you go to sit down for dinner, you see someone walk down the road, you don't feel like, well, that person might need to eat.
Yeah.
Right? In the Japanese culture, that's exactly what they think.
That's crazy. Do you recall the day service ended?
When I ended my service?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was August 26, 2006.
And where were you?
I was in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba.
Okay. Was it, were you there, doing a certain thing, or were you just there?
Yeah, I was there. I can't talk about everything that went on there. I mean, that's where the detainees were held, the terrorist detainees.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Did you return home? Hold on. One. Okay, we'll just skip that question.
Okay.
It's a weird question.
Well, you can ask it. I mean, we can try to work with it.
Did you return home? Where were you?
Okay, so I was in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. And yes, I returned home, and at that time I lived in Hawaii.
Wow. Did you do that because it was just easier because you were moving around so much, or did you have a reason for living in Hawaii?
Well, I mean, the reason why I was in Hawaii is before I deployed from Hawaii, I mean, I was stationed at Pearl Harbor.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Did you have kids while you were in the service?
No, I did not.
Oh, okay. I have a couple friends that were born on military bases.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And yeah, pretty interesting. It's kind of funny, one of my friends, he was born in a base in Italy.
Uh-huh.
And we always say that when we're introducing him to a new guy or something, we're like, he's Italian. And he always says, no, he's not. I'm not Italian, guys.
Yeah.
He's Italian.
Yeah, because he's born in Italy.
How were you received by your family or your community?
It was actually rough. I didn't have family at the time. So when I first got out, I felt like, okay, I've served for 14 years, and I've got a lot of experience, a lot of leadership experience, a lot of world experience under my belt. I should be able to find work pretty easily. That was not the case. Coming home was bittersweet. It was really bittersweet because I couldn't find a job. No one would hire me because they said I didn't have any civilian experience. If that wasn't what they used, then they would say I didn't have enough experience or I had too much experience. So it was really hard because then I felt like, okay, well, I had savings, I had money, that I had saved over the years, and I was living off of that. In the meantime, I was going job interview, and I was always getting shut down, And mostly what I heard was I didn't have enough civilian experience. So I felt like I was getting shot down because I was a veteran. I felt like I was getting shut out, because I spent 14 years in the military serving this country, and I didn't do anything in the civilian world. You know, so I felt pretty hopeless for a while. You know, it took me 2 years before I got my first job.
It's kind of strange to me. That doesn't seem right at all.
No, it doesn't. And, you know, and that was in Hawaii. I don't know if it was like that for other veterans everywhere else. You know, I have other veteran friends, you know, one of them which, you know, was born and raised here in Michigan as well and came back to Michigan, and he went through the same problem. My best friend that I told you that had passed, you know, he went through the same thing. You know, it took him a couple of years before he could find a job. You know, it's for some reason at that point in time, people were reluctant. I would say, I don't think they hated us. You know, it's not like the stories you would hear about, you know, Vietnam veterans coming home, but it felt like that. You know, we didn't get spit in the face, but, you know, for us to not even be able to get a job, you know, felt like a spit in the face.
Yeah. That would make me angry. Definitely. But
Well, it doesn't. Well, some people it makes angry. Some people it makes them, you know, dwindle. You know, makes you feel hopeless. You know, depressed. Like there's nothing you can do. You know, I mean, think about if you could not, you know, make an income and feed yourself. You know, think about the homeless vets that are out there, you know, all over the United States that couldn't get a job, can't get a job. You know, and I think it was a fear thing, you know, because like the earlier question, does combat change you? Yes, it does. You know, does it change you? For me, did it change me in a way that I could see? You know, personally, you know, yes, I knew I was changed, but I didn't know to the extent. You know, one of the things I heard a lot when I first got out was I was very intimidating, right? I just intimidate people. And, you know, I always took that as I'm being nice, I'm being open, I'm being talkative. So how am I intimidating anybody? You know, what am I doing that is intimidating? So something about what changed in me made people fearful, right? And I heard it from multiple people. You know, so it's not like a person told me that, and it's not like people associated with each other told me that. People over time kept telling me that, you know. People that learned to know me, they're like, man, you know, when I first met you, man, gosh, you were so scary. I'm thinking, why? I don't get it. You know, so it's something that I can't see. I don't think it's something other veterans can see in themselves, you know, but obviously other people do.
well, you talk about people being sort of intimidated by you. Did anybody's opinion change about you if they didn't know you were a veteran and then they found out you were a veteran? Did their opinion ever change about you?
Well, you know, I mean, I've never hid the fact that I'm a veteran.
Okay.
I've never, you know, applied for a job and said, hey, you know, because here's the thing, anyways, you know, when you're looking and you're applying for a job and you just put it in a resume, well, what's your work history?
Yeah.
Well, military. You know, I've served for 14 years. You know, it was my life. My plan was to actually retire from the military. I just chose not to, you know, later on in my military career. But it became part of my life. That was my life. So going out into the civilian world, of course, what's my resume read? Everything I've ever done in the military. That's what I read. So, yeah. Could I have tried to hide the fact I was in the military? I guess I could have, but why would I want to? I was proud of my service.
Yeah. I mean, I know that I try not to do this. I try not to. I respect all veterans. You know, if I meet somebody, I always, you know, thank them for your service. I apologize I didn't do that already.
No, it's totally fine. Yeah.
But
I hear it a lot.
I'm close with quite a few that I cherish that they're in my life, and sometimes people begin to respect a person just because they were in the military. not that
Right.
that's not a good cause to start respecting a person, but it shouldn't. I don't think it should be the only thing.
You're right. I agree with you 100%. Respect is earned.
Yeah.
No matter what you've done. Respect is earned. Look, here's the thing. Overall, you got to look at people in the service, do they deserve some respect that served? Sure. Okay, they do. But your local police officer deserves respect because they're serving you, right? Your postal worker deserves respect because they're serving you. Your waitress deserves respect because she's serving you, right? Everybody has a role to play in every facet of life. Could I do what I did in all my years of service if people like yourself weren't back home doing what you were supposed to do? I couldn't. If I had to worry about, my family back home constantly, right, because nobody else is doing their job, right, well, how could I do my job, right? So everybody plays a role. Look, we all serve. Whether it's in the military or not, we all serve.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah. But did you see that at all? Like, did people... I see it in kids, like younger kids, people my age even. A lot of kids in my class contemplate enlisting.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very attractive career opportunity at this point, at least in my school.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are enlisting or thinking about it at least.
Okay.
I mean, even I've thought about it before.
Well, my question would be why? What's your motivation?
Really, it's I see a lot of opportunities to learn, and so many people I respect have done it, and it just like you said, I just want to find a purpose. I want to know that I'm doing some kind of good, and sometimes it seems like that's the only way I'm truly gonna know that.
Well, I'll share this with you. When I was younger and I was serving, I felt like I was doing good. But I'm always following somebody else's orders. Okay, I'm not doing what I want to do. I'm not choosing my battles, right? I'm fighting the battles that are chosen for me. Okay. So with that, am I doing good? Right? Well, I feel like I am. Right? But there's a bigger picture of what's going on in the world that you're not aware of. It's very compartmentalized. Right? So, yeah, I'm doing good. I feel like I'm doing good. I'm fighting for my country or serving my country in some way. Okay? The other perspective of that, too, is, what is it that you want out of it? What are you getting out of serving, right? Just like you said, you want to experience things, and that's a good place to experience. You will, you have the opportunity to travel the world, right? And experience new people, new places, new things. Is that always your choice of where you go, what you experience? Absolutely not. You're just along for the ride, really. And I'm not trying to, I would never discourage anybody from serving. I had the same conversation with, one of my cousins. He was the second Marine in our family. He joined after I got out, and I spent a good month with him, talking to him, sharing my experiences with him before he made his decision, to join the Marines. Serving is a good thing, right? And like I said, there's many different facets of serving. What you get out of the military is not a choice for you, really. You understand what I'm saying? So you decide to join the military. You don't get to decide where you go to boot camp. That's decided for you. Everything's decided for you. So does that mean it's going to be a bad experience? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's going to be always unknown. Right? You're always delving in the unknown, which is a growing thing. right? Because now you're always learning to adapt to new environments, new people, new places, new things, which is what helps you grow as a person. But it doesn't necessarily mean what you have in your mind is what I'm going to get out of this is what's going to happen, right? So we can't project our future. Everybody wants to predict the future, where we're going to be, what we're going to do, right? But you can't project that. You can only experience and live your life, military or not, and decide, okay, what am I going to pull from experience in my life and put in my toolbox and make it part of who I am, and what am I going to leave out, right? Which is ultimately going to make you who you are in the future.
Did you join a veteran organization?
You know, when I first got out, I joined the Veterans of Foreign Wars organization. I never went. I paid my dues. You know, you had to pay monthly fees or yearly fees. You know, and you can go there and be with other veterans and, you know, talk story and stuff like that. I never actually participated, honestly. I think after going through my situation after I got out, you know, and I had a doom and gloom moment in my life, right, with not being able to find work and feeling pretty useless at that point, even though I had all these years of experience. You know, I kind of caved in on myself, right, and trying to rediscover who am I now, right? This is who I was when I served. But who am I now, and who do I have to be? Who do I need to become, right, to be successful in the civilian world? You know, that's a tough transition for a lot of people. You know, it was tough for me.
Do you attend reunions at all?
You know, I've never even heard of a reunion.
Okay.
You know, in the military, it's not like high school. It's like, hey, 10-year, you know, class platoon reunion. You know, if that ever happens, I've never heard of it.
Yeah. I mean, but you already said that you made such good friends, relationships with people.
Yes.
That you just stayed in touch over the years,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is pretty incredible to be friends with somebody for that long. I mean, I've never been friends with somebody that long. You know, I mean, I'm not old enough to
Right.
to even do that possibly, but.
Well, you know, I don't think that's always. You know, I know people that have had friends they're still friends with since they were in elementary school. You know, I know people like that. I don't have that personally, and I don't think that's commonly the thing, anyways. Right? People live their lives. You know, they move away, they get a new job, they get a different career. You know, people go their little ways. They start their own families, have their own path that they follow in life. You know, so I don't think that's always the case. You know, is it something I've thought about and said, you know, I have old military friends, but I don't have old childhood friends. You know, and I've thought about that, and I thought, man, you know, if I'd never joined, you know, would I still have these old friends? You know, there's no way of knowing that for certain. You know, so to me, it's not something I wrap my head around. You know, if I've ever thought it, it's like friends come and go, they do. The ones that are meant to be in your life for the rest of your life will be there. You know, even if you don't talk to them every day. You know, that I've come across military friends, or you know, since I've been back in Michigan, I've had old junior high school friends I've been back in touch with, right? And it's like, wow, okay, so you're still there, right? We ain't talked in 30 years, right? But you're still there. So your life is like a ripple in a pond. It really is. You know, once you make a defining moment in someone's life, you're always in it, even if you're not there. You know, and that just it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, right, as your life goes on, because now you're making more ripples, right? And those people that you think totally forgotten about you, could give crap less about you later on down the road, are still thinking about you. Because you know what? I think if you're thinking about them, they're probably thinking about you too. Because you both have a profound connection between each other, right? Even if you never talk.
You really answered most of these questions already.
Okay.
Okay. I'm curious about this one, and I usually ask some form of this to most veterans that I meet. How has your military service impacted your feelings about war itself and military in general?
How has it impacted my feelings about war itself? Well, I mean, it's true what they say, war is hell. Do I think wars are necessary? You know, I don't know. I haven't gotten to that level of wisdom that I can say yes or no. They happen, you know. Did I think that I would ever see a war like we've seen in my lifetime before it happened? No, I didn't. Do I feel like we'll see another one? I don't know. So that's my perspective that's changed. Before I was kind of like, you know, we'll have peace, you know, as long as I live. You know, and then war happens, actual war happens, and you're like, okay, well, that's not true. Right? So I think everybody gets in their comfort zone. People that have fought wars, you know, yeah, everything changes. All your perspectives change. You know, now everything that seemed impossible becomes possible. Right? And you lean more towards its possible side than you do, oh, well, that'll never happen side. So it changes you in that perspective.
What's your opinion of, like, the branches of service that you experience, Marines and Navy, compared to the other branches? Do you think there are big differences?
Well, yeah, I mean, there are differences. You know, like I said, you know, the Marine Corps is the only branch of service where they consider everybody an infantryman. Okay, so everybody trains to fight as an infantryman in the Marines. Okay, and that's just one aspect of the Marine Corps compared to the other branches. You know, and then you got, you know, obviously the Navy, they specialize more in sea, right? Ships and sea service, right? And they also, a lot of people don't know this, the Navy actually has the largest Air Force. Right? You think Air Force, you think planes, you know, but that's not the case, right? The Navy actually has the largest Air Force. So that's a difference there. You know, your Air Force is more space. Satellites, space, missiles, you know, that kind of stuff. They have aircraft, of course, but that's not their primary focus, despite the name. And then, of course, you know, just before 2000, well, before I got out, the Coast Guard wasn't actually a military service. It was Department of Transportation. They are freshly new military, actually, right? Considered actually military service. But, you know, and what do they do? You know, you would think, okay, the Coast Guard is just in the United States. You know, well, one of the things that surprised me in my service, you know, and being deployed into Korea and stuff like that, well, I'm seeing Coast Guard there, and I'm thinking, what are they doing here? Right? They're supposed to just be monitoring the coastline of the United States, but that's not the case. So it's hard to depict every difference, right? Most people in the Navy don't even ever touch a gun. Right? They're not taught how to shoot a gun. Right? So that's a big deal. You know, when you're thinking, well, this is military, right? So not everybody in the Navy is taught to pick up a weapon. You know, where everybody in the Marine Corps is and everybody in the Army is, right? So there's a lot of drastic difference. However, as far as pay scale goes, rank structure goes, you know, it's pretty much the same. You're still working for the government. It's just a department of what are you working for, And now you got this new thing, Space Force, right? That's interesting.
I don't know anything about Space Force.
Well, it just started, so I don't know either, but it sounds interesting.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, my uncle was in the Coast Guard, and you were talking about how far-reaching they actually are. It's kind of interesting how that's true. He didn't really go that far, but he knew people, like you said, in Korea.
Yeah. I was surprised.
Yeah.
Back then, I was like, wow. All right.
Yeah, I think the farthest, he was in Alaska for like 10 years in Kodiak.
Nice.
And then he went to Cuba, I believe. But yeah, he didn't really go that many places, but he knew people that did.
Sure, yeah.
What message would you like to leave for future generations who are going to see this interview?
As far as going into the military or not going in the military, is that what you're getting at?
Just anything you wish.
It's like I think I've kind of pointed it out. Is like, regardless of you serve in the military or not, if you serve your community, you serve your nation, you don't have to wear a uniform to do that. There's no honor and glory behind the uniform. Okay, it's what you do. Right? The tales that they tell of these soldiers who did miraculous things, are just, they're not. It's not. I'm not trying to say they're not miraculous, but you can do miraculous things outside of the uniform as well. So if you're going to serve in a military fashion, really define what it is to you of why you do that. You really need to define that, because it is a huge honor. It's a huge privilege. It's a real privilege to volunteer to serve your country in the military. And you've got to be ready to devote yourself completely to do that. If you think you are going in there because you're just going to take advantage of the education program, that's not the reason to go. If you're just doing it because you think it pays okay, it's not the reason to go. Right? Duty and service is the highest honor you can give your country in a military platform. And don't take it lightly. Yeah. But also don't diminish yourself. If you stay a civilian and you serve as a civilian, you're still doing a service for your community and your country.
I love that. That's awesome. So that's pretty much it. This is the conclusion portion. I just have to say I'm blown away pretty much. I'm so happy that I got to do this.
I'm honored to be here. I appreciate the invitation.
I'm glad I chose you. I'm sure I would have been glad to choose any of the people that were optional, but I'm so glad I got to hear your story, at least a smidget of it. Because I'm sure that's all I heard today. It's just a smidget of it.
Oh yeah, you're just touching the surface right now.
But thank you for taking the time to help me do this project.
It was a pleasure meeting you.
Yeah, it was amazing meeting you too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm honored that you got to tell me these things.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything you would like to add that we haven't covered?
We could talk all night. I could tell you all sorts of stuff. But I know you're limited on time. I'm sure you don't get to take up 2 hours of space. So, look, I'm honored. I'm honored to have served. I support, like you said, support your veterans. You know, I'm doing good. You know, I know some of my fellow veterans aren't. You know, and I went through a moment in my life where, you know, people saying thank you for your service meant nothing, because it felt like it meant nothing. It was just lip service. You know, so, you know, if you really, really honor the veterans, then honor them. You know, and I'm not talking to you specifically. I'm talking to whoever's watching this video.
Is there anything you've always wanted to share about your service or veteran experience that you never have?
No, you know, I'm pretty open with people who ask me about it. You know, I'm proud of everything. I would not change a thing, good and bad, all the ugly. You know, everything has come around, you know, to make sense, and make me who I am as a person. You know, the experience I've had in this life, you know, especially with my military experience, is phenomenal. You know, people tell me all the time I should write a book, and, you know, I'm just not a writer, so I don't. But it's nice to be able to sit down with, you know, young men like you, and, you know, have these kind of conversations and be able to tell a little bit of story, maybe make an impact on your life a little bit, you know, in a positive way. You know, I always enjoy that. I like to spread that for the next generation. I really do. And that's pretty much my motivation, you know, for keeping on.
I'm glad. I'm glad you feel that way. What would you like people to know or remember from your story?
You know, I'm not a philosopher, but what I would like everybody to remember is that, you know, we're all connected. Whether we know it or not, we're all connected. I can go back again and say, you know, I didn't even know you existed until you called me. You know, but here we are. You know, and I'm sure you'll remember this encounter just like I will. You know, for years and years. You know, I couldn't tell you how nervous I was, how honored I was, you know, to have this opportunity to sit down with you, you know, and meet you. And I'm so glad that it happened. And I know that maybe something I've shared with you is going to stay with you, you know, and that'll transfer in with your life. You know, maybe something I said today will go into your toolbox.
I promise you, there's have definitely been things here today that I will just ponder. That'll just stay with me. Are there any? That's the end. Are there any questions you'd like to ask me?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I'd like to stay in touch with you. You know, if you want to know more outside of the interview, that'd be great. You know, I mean, I don't mind sharing.
Yeah.
You know, I think you seem like a very well-rounded young man, and, you know, I think that's awesome. You know, that you have all these interests, and I'm willing to share that with you if you want to stay in touch. You have my number,
Yeah.
so.
Do you have my number?
I do. I actually texted you before I came.
Oh.
I don't think you were looking.
Okay.
You're getting ready. You're just preparing.
They tell us to put our phones down because, like, can't have the phone like buzzing while we're.
Well, sure, yeah, yeah.
Well, I'd be very happy to do that.
Yeah.
So I believe that's the end. Well, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
This is the date is the November 13th, and this is my interview with Micheal Yant. My first video for the Veterans History Project. Thank you.
Thank you.